Hello again, A to Z Sports Nashville, Easton Freeze, joined once more by JT Runke here on location at St. Thomas Sports Park following the Titans' third and final padded practice of this weekend, and it was a practice of all time. Sure was. It was one of them. We're going to talk about what we took away from today's practice. They are now one practice away here at the facility in Nashville from starting their long 2-week road trip, heading to Tampa Bay for joint practices that begin this upcoming Thursday. And then they'll play their first preseason game on Saturday evening. And then they will quickly head back this direction to Atlanta, to Flowery Branch outside of Atlanta, to spend a couple of days in joint practices next week with the Falcons before playing them in a preseason game. And then they will come home, and their final week of training camp will be here before they play the Vikings in their lone home playoff preseason game this year. And then we will be ready to take one weekend off, and then it'll be the season. So there's where we're at right now. And the Titans practice today. How could one sum it up? Brian Callahan used one word after practice to describe it that I can't mention on YouTube. However, he used another word after practice to describe it that I also can't say on YouTube, as well as a phrase that I can't say on YouTube. I would say bad football practice is probably how I would describe it. Sorry, pathetic, uninspiring, a waste of our Sunday morning. And there's always two sides. It's a little dramatic, but there's always two sides of the coin. Like, one side of the ball is very bad. That means the other side of the ball is generally good. But the offense was terrible today for the most part. And the defense, I guess that by default makes them the better unit. But they weren't exactly inspiring either. It wasn't. Here's the important part. It wasn't that the defense was stopping the offense a lot of the time. It was the offense stopping the offense not working, whatever. Yep. It wasn't for lack of ability to beat this defense. The defense was just kind of around, and the offense made their jobs easy.
There were a lot of plays that if it just goes right for the offense, we wouldn't be talking about this. I think you can sum it up. The first team specifically had a really bad day. 3 drives on 11-on-11, full simulated type of game situations from different parts of the field. The first team offense only manages to convert 1 first down, as the whole goal of the drive, or the exercise, is to try to drive the length of the field wherever you are. And the Titans' first team offense with Cam Ward and the starters in 3 attempts only were able to get 1 first down. And in there were a lot of other different things that went wrong, a lot of incomplete passes, a lot of penalties, and a lot more just miscommunication that was happening that I think made Brian Callahan share those expletives at the end of practice in frustration. But, like you said, there were still some good things that happened today, I would say, specifically on the defensive side of the ball. Denard Wilson continues to just throw everything at this offense, specifically first-team offense, so much so that it seems like the offensive coaches know this. Bo Hardegree, after the practice today, had a little bit of a smile and agreed with the sentiment that it is incredibly tough for the offense right now because of how much they're throwing at him in different looks. And I think that's the main point, that even though we call it a really bad practice and a really frustrating one, it's another learning experience for these guys.
It's by design, and so that's why it is August 3rd. It is a situation this weekend in practice where they are very intentionally making life hellish for the offense, and that's why I'm not, particularly up in arms quite yet. Is it encouraging? Certainly not. Is it deeply discouraging? Maybe. This is me being jaded, having covered the league for a couple of years. Nothing gets me all that fired up this time of year. Too many times I have seen guys look really good and then mean nothing on real Sundays, and guys look really bad and be awesome on real Sundays. I'm old enough to remember when Jamar Chase couldn't catch. I'm old enough to remember when C.J. Stroud looked awful in his preseason debut. It is all a grain of salt, a situation, but that does not excuse the fact that today's practice looked like a bunch of guys on their 3rd consecutive morning of padded practices, feeling sorry for themselves, wanting to be done with this, and that is not only unacceptable, but a one-way ticket to another terrible season and everybody getting fired, and that's not what they're aiming to do. So they've got a couple weeks to tighten things up. The one thing I will say is that if they practice like this, and I'm sure this is probably being echoed to the team by Brian Callahan and staff as we speak in the building behind us. If you guys go out and practice like this in Tampa this week and in Atlanta next week, you're going to be embarrassed in front of another team and on a national stage, and it's going to be ugly. So I think there will be a call to arms. We'll see what Wednesday's practice here looks like, whether that's a padded or a walkthrough, and as they get ready for Thursday, maybe they get a little kick in the butt from the way that today went.
Yeah, two things as well. I think you bring up a good point in this frustration. J.C. Latham, after practice, I think summed it up well, that the frustration comes from today's practice looking like the 3-14 football team that they were last season,
right.
Something they don't want to be. That's where the frustration happens. This was a practice where, not like the new team, they looked exactly like the old team, where it was just uninspired. And I think that's what they're trying to get rid of. That's why it was a lot more frustrating today. And then Bill Callahan also talking about how Denard Wilson's defense, they're throwing multiplicity at him, which I think is a very fun word to use. But the amount of things that are being thrown at this offensive line, who can take some of the blame for the offense's woes today, the type of defense that they're throwing at Cam Ward, is so much different variety in a small sample size that I think Bill Callahan had some nice, step back and look at it from a 10,000-foot view, that when you're actually game planning for a team, it's not going to look like this. Things get simpler when the real football happens, and I think that's what we have to remember here.
Yep, agreed. There's so much more to say, but we're going to save it for a couple of morning shows for you guys. Starting back up tomorrow morning, I'll be joined by Austin Stanley. Where you're watching this video right now, the A to Z Sports YouTube channel, you guys know the drill. 8 o'clock-ish tomorrow morning, Austin and I will recap what we learned over the weekend, kind of take things from a 10,000-foot view. But that was the recap of today's woeful practice. We won't be back out here until Wednesday, and then the Titans hit the road. For JT, I'm Easton Freeze. We'll talk to you this week.